Hello guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be listing my top 10 least favorite players in the NHL right now. Now I don't absolutely hate any players on this list. The only player that I absolutely hate is Alex Burrows, and of course he retired this past season, so I can't really put him on here. But I don't truly hate any of these players. I just have a very strong distaste for them. I'm going to get straight into it, and I have Jamie Alexiak at number 10, of course, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, formerly on my favorite team, the Dallas Stars, and in my opinion, it's pretty good riddance that he was traded. I didn't think he improved with Pittsburgh. It looked like he was a lot better, but most players do improve when they go to a team like Dallas, to a team like Pittsburgh. So I think that he definitely had reason to improve, and if he didn't, that would be some serious problems for him. And as a Dallas fan, obviously not the greatest pick looking back on it for 14th overall. The next pick was JT Miller at 15th overall, which obviously stings in my heart. And with his time in Dallas, he was absolutely and positively a pylon. He was a defensive liability at times, and of course, most of the time he could not chip in offensively to save his life. With Dallas, he just could not do anything, and I'm glad he's doing better with Pittsburgh, but he's still not that great player. He's still not that 14th overall guy that we picked him as. He's just a okay top 6 guy that can do some things decently. And yeah, it's cool to see him doing decent in Pittsburgh, but he would never have done that in Dallas, and pretty good riddance as hopefully that 4th round pick becomes something, but he was going to turn out to be that type of player with Dallas, and I don't even think he'll be that player with Pittsburgh. But for me, he's one of my unlikable players just because of his style, and of course how disappointing he was with Dallas, and what he should have been was a lot better than what he is right now. At number 9, I have Cody McLeod of the New York Rangers now, when he was with the Nashville Predators to start out last season, and I don't really hate his playstyle overall. He's a pretty generic enforcer. He brings the fights, and he doesn't score many points, but when he does, it's pretty agitating. He played 48 games at both of the Nashville Predators and the New York Rangers last season. He scored 1 goal. And who's my favorite team? The Dallas Stars. And want to guess who he scored that against? Yeah, the Dallas Stars again when he was with the Nashville Predators. And that was hilarious at the time, but just looking back on it, it is so frustrating that that happened. And Cody McLeod is been that suspension type guy, he's been that enforcer type guy for a while, and he's been that pretty dirty player, and he's already pretty unlikable, but this past season, he's got a little bit extra for me. And for Cody McLeod, I don't like, he's pretty much that generic enforcer that is still somehow finding NHL time right now in the NHL with the speed and the game like that, like it is right now. It's kind of crazy that he still has a job. But he's that type of player. He's not really too extra special. But the thing that he's done in the last few years with the suspensions and but times that he's burned Dallas somehow, some way, has just made me even more agitated. And well, I guess he's doing a pretty good job as he's made me agitated. He's probably made a lot of the NHL players agitated too. At number 8, I have Robin Leonard of the New York Islanders, of course the goaltender, the new one. They acquired one in the offseason for them. Going into next season, he's going to be their new guy there and will hopefully be decent for them. But it's not the temper tantrums and the just immature stuff that he's done in the past that really grinds my gears, and even though that's still pretty bad, it's not that part. This past season with the Buffalo Sabres, I thought he was absolutely horrendous. He put up a 908 save percentage, but the defense, while it was not the greatest, the Robin Leonard, whenever I saw Buffalo games, he was just absolutely trash, and he had that one good season, I think a 920 save percentage, I think 2 seasons ago, which he was decent, but last season, I saw enough from him to know that he was just crap, and hopefully he's a lot better for New York. I mean, the defense is arguably worse, so we'll see what happens there, but from what I see, the hatred just stems from me being disappointed in his play, in all honesty. And while the temper tantrums certainly have something to do with it, the overall disappointment in him from this past season, I thought the Buffalo Sabres had a good chance with him as the goaltender, and to be a playoff type team, I thought they had a decent chance going into the season, but for me, the disappointment last season, the just terrible play that I saw from him last season, just burned a hatred in my heart because I wanted him to be good. I wanted Robert Leonard to be good, but he just disappointed me in the end. Hopefully he's a lot better with New York. He still has some time, and he's still pretty decently young. At number 7, I have Brad Marchand of the Boston Bruins, and you may be thinking, why am I putting him this low on the list? Well, it's kind of, I don't really hate him as much as other people do, and I don't hate him for the exact reasons as other people do. Yes, he's a very cheap player. He's a very just immature player at times, and the thing that gets me the most is he has so much freaking potential with the Boston Bruins. His just playmaking, his talent level is through the roof. If he wasn't being suspended, he's been the most suspended player since 2009, and that's just crazy to me. He has so much talent. He has so much playmaking ability with the Boston Bruins. It's crazy, and at the end of the day, he just wastes it. He wastes it on immature plays that gets him suspended, that gets him fined, and that's the most frustrating thing with him. Like Brad Marchand, he's one of those players that gets suspended, but he has those talent levels. He has the absolute ability to be one of the best players in the NHL, but he wastes it, it seems, every year on getting suspended for like 20 games throughout the whole year. And to me, there's so much wasted potential of the Boston Bruins, and so much wasted talent that he could be one of the greatest guys in the NHL right now if he was a lot more of a clean player, and if he just let his skills come up. And to me, he's just wasted that on some immature plays. And while sometimes I get it, with Brad Marchand, he is that rat that he's a very talented rat at that, but I just wish that he would quit the crap, quit all of these suspensions, and become a little bit cleaner, clean up his act, and he could be a much better player, and he already has superstar talent. To me, while the cheap shots are very bad and the immature plays are very, very bad, the thing that disappoints me the most is his play, his suspensions. It just leads to it, and I just wish that he would just be a much cleaner player so he could see his career finally play out and finally blossom. He hasn't given himself that chance yet, and I'm hoping that he does next season. And it's not about the cheap shots that I really, really hate. It's about the disappointment of his career and what could have been if he wasn't so dirty. At number 6, I have Dustin Brown of the LA Kings. Now, this is not about the type of play, it's about his style of play, really. He's had multiple suspensions in the past, multiple fines in the past, and he's been pretty underrated in the dirty plays department. He's actually a pretty dirty player when you look at his on-ice play, when you look at how he plays, he's a pretty dirty player, and he gets away with a lot of stuff. And I feel like he could be a little more suspension worthy. I don't think he gets the attention that he deserves when it comes to those dirty plays. I mean, he's a very underrated dirty player, and he brings a lot of that ruggedness, a lot of that edge on the ice every single night. And while that may be a good thing, it could also be a bad thing for him. He also rebounded with the LA Kings this past season, and great for him. That contract is looking a lot better because he looked a lot better this past season. Good to see him being a lot better offensively, but just his overall style of play on the other side of the ice when he doesn't have the puck is a lot more concerning. At number 5, I have Andrew Shaw of the Montreal Canadiens, and I've been hating him since his Chicago Blackhawks days, and he's been, since he started his career, pretty much that guy that's always been on the alarm for the NHL. He's been suspended multiple times, fined multiple times, and he's just been an overall just jerk with the refs, and he's just been an overall nuisance for the entire NHL and for all the players involved. There's stuff like him saying homophobic slurs to people on the ice. There's other stuff being suspended multiple times, both from the playoffs and the regular season. It doesn't paint the best picture for him, and I obviously don't like him for it. I remember Montreal Canadiens games last season. He would always be on edge when he was able to play. He would always be that type of player that you would see some questionable hits, you would see some questionable stuff, but you would see him get away with it just a little bit. And he's a good player in that aspect, but for me, there's a lot of questionable stuff over his career, and there's a lot of stuff where I just see a player that brings that terrible play on the ice, brings the stuff that you just don't want to see with the NHL, and Andrew Shaw, I think, is a great example of that. At number 4, I have David Backes of the Boston Bruins, and this extends to his time in St. Louis, of course, me being a Dallas Stars fan. 2016 is still in my heart, very proud day, and obviously I have some bad memories from that year, especially when it comes to the St. Louis Blues. Now, David Backes has always been one of my least favorite players because of what he was with the St. Louis Blues and what he was doing there, and that's kind of a good thing on his part, because the reason I hate him the most was that he could really do everything to agitate you. He could agitate you both in the physicality, he would agitate you in the defense, and he would go up the ice and score a deflection goal for a hat trick like he did against Dallas, I'm pretty sure. He's just an agitating player in general, and he's very good in getting deep in your skin. Even as a fan perspective, I can't even realize what it would be like as a player on the ice, but he's a perfect example of a great all-around player that could do a lot for you. He was pretty banged up with Boston this past season, unfortunately, but he, again, is a pretty solid player both offensively, defensively, and he does a lot of stuff, and I hate him because he's just really solid overall, and he did a lot of things for St. Louis to get them past the Dallas Stars in that 2016 second round, which obviously agitated me so much back then. At number 3, I have Corey Perry of the Anaheim Ducks, and of course, as a Dallas Stars fan, it does translate, especially. Them trading away the pick that ended up being Corey Perry definitely stings, but even now, I wouldn't want Corey Perry on my team. He does a lot of things, a lot of questionable things, and some of them are blatantly bad, and some of them just get away with it. And Corey Perry is one of those players that most of the time gets away with it. Yeah, he dropped off in the offensive production, but he wasn't terrible last season. He just saw a massive decline, which may not be the worst thing at all. But for Corey Perry, I just don't like the player at all. I just don't like the play style at all. And the player that he represents is, I think, one of the worst examples in the NHL of a clean player. He's just the opposite of that. At number 2, I have Ryan Kesler, and I know this guy is on a lot of lists, so a lot of you probably relate because he's on the Anaheim Ducks, and with his time in Vancouver, he was a very dirty player, but he was actually pretty decent. He was a very good, I'm pretty sure, second line center for them, whatever he was a very solid player. But kind of like what David Backes was in St. Louis, he was a very solid player, but he would go up the ice, score, and then get you agitated once again in the physicality, in the fights. He's a very good all-around player, and he was still pretty dirty, but he still had a lot of things towards him. Now, Anaheim, he's pretty much crap. He might not even play the 2019-2020 season, or this past season, the 2018-2019 season. He might not even play that season. He could be out entirely, and that is a scary situation for the Anaheim Ducks, scary situation for him. I think he played like 40 games last season, but he wasn't that good either. But Ryan Kesler just has so many suspensions under his belt, so many fines under his belt, and the player on the ice is just one of the nastiest players in my opinion. Along with Corey Perry, they're very dirty, and defensively they're monsters. They're absolutely beasts, but offensively they can't really bring too much anymore. For me, Ryan Kesler has to rely on his dirty plays now. He can't bring the offense that he used to. He is somewhat can't bring the defense that he used to, so he has to rely on pretty cheap plays right now and pretty dirty plays. So it might be the best from the NHL that he doesn't play next season. I feel like the player off the ice is pretty decent, but on the ice, I just don't like him at all. He represents just players that I hate, and for Ryan Kesler, I don't like his play, I don't like his style, I really don't like anything about him, which is sad to say, but it is true. At number 1, and this doesn't come to a lot of surprise because I've said this guy is my least favorite player for quite a while. It is Brooks Orpik of the Washington Capitals, and you may be thinking, why am I putting a pretty irrelevant guy on the list so high up and at number 1? But I've always liked the Washington Capitals. They've been one of my teams that I've always rooted for throughout the last few years. So when I became a hockey fan in 2014-2015, I was rooting for them. And then in the past couple of seasons, when they didn't get it done, I was still rooting for them to get it done. And of course, they didn't do that. With Brooks Orpik, I'm pretty sure he signed there in free agency, and that contract was terrible to the start. And I felt like he was always holding the Washington Capitals back. In 2015, he was terrible. In 2016, he might have been even worse. And this year, he was one of the worst players in the NHL when it just comes to advanced stats in general. He was just terrible, and he had a very good Stanley Cup final, which was hilarious, of course. But to me, the Washington Capitals were always held back by playing guys like Brooks Orpik every single night, and were always held back in the playoffs because of it. And what made me hate him even more is he comes in this playoffs and plays decently, and in the Stanley Cup final, he actually has a pretty good one. And that just makes me hate him more, because now people actually think he's a good defenseman because he played so good in this past playoffs, but he's actually really bad. And of course, he's going to be on the Capitals next season. They re-signed him after, or they signed him once again after Colorado bottom out. So we're going to see more of Brooks Orpik. Please, God, help me. But for me, I hate the player. He is pretty cheap, but he's just really terrible. I felt like he held back the Washington Capitals, but of course he comes back this season and plays very well. And again, I don't hate the person outside the ice. I don't hate the guy personality-wise. I just think that he's a pretty trash NHL player when you compare him to practically everybody. And it was great to see him have a Stanley Cup final, and it was great to have him as a Stanley Cup champion and play well in that Stanley Cup final. But to me, what he did in the past and how he held back the Washington Capitals in the past will always still stay in my heart. But of course, I don't hate any of these players off the ice. Probably some of these guys are pretty decent off the ice and decent guys all around. But on the ice, I do despise a lot of these players. So when it comes to that, I'm not rooting for them at all. Of course, when it comes to least favorite NHL players, there's a ton of players to choose from in the NHL right now, and there's a lot of differing opinions. So I want to know what your guys' least favorite players on the NHL, and tell me the stories why, because those are probably the best part. But that is going to be it for today, guys. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you like and subscribe. Tell me below again, what is your least favorite players, and what do you think of my list of least favorite players too? And I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.